Welcome to episode 40 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I tried summoning the darkness once, but it doesn't return my phone calls anymore.
And I am Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of this podcast, and I love the 80s.
So joining us today are Allison and Ian Lovecraft. You've both done episodes with us before. Thank you for being insane enough to come back, even knowing how terrible we are as human beings.
Thanks for having us back.
Yeah, for sure.
So why don't you guys tell everybody what you do and tell us about the Esoteric Order of Geekdom, and just catch everyone up in case they haven't listened to your other episodes and they should go download them now.
All right. We run the Esoteric Order of Geekdom in Las Vegas, Nevada. It is just kind of like a geeky group that we you can find on social media. We also have a horror themed section that focuses strictly on horror. We do trivia and movie screenings when it's not quarantine time. And I'm a product of the 80s, so I'm excited for this episode.
Awesome. Ian, do you have anything to add to that?
Not really. Just ready to ride this quarantine out so the world can get back to normal.
Absolutely. Man. Yeah, I've been just chilling in my house. Like, I've literally left my property twice since St. Patrick's Day. And the second time I left my property, I didn't even get out of the car. I literally just went along for a car ride. So I don't even know if that counts. But yeah, so to say that I'm quarantined would be probably an understatement at this point. I feel like everyone else gets out way more than me. What about you, Don? What have you been doing during quarantine?
Avoiding people when I have to go outside and get groceries and supplies, and I don't know, randomly playing the Purge siren when I see somebody that gets on my damn nerves.
So they released the name of the new Purge the other day. I think it's like Forever Purge or something like that.
This is the Purge that never ends. It goes
on and on.
There we go. I know I was going to get somebody.
If that song doesn't make it into the movie now, I'm going to be depressed. All right. So we're here today to talk about We Summon the Darkness, which just came out on video on demand and whatever other platforms this past Friday. I've been looking forward to this for a while, ever since I saw the first trailer. And for the most part, I enjoyed it way more than I probably should have, and definitely more than I thought I would. And I thought I would really enjoy it, but I loved this movie. So I'm going to be the insane person that just keeps telling you that it doesn't matter what's wrong with it. It's fantastic. What did you guys think of it? Did you enjoy it? Like, just overall?
Overall, I really enjoyed it. Like, there's stuff with every movie that's not going to make sense. But overall, I really enjoyed it, and I think this will be a movie that when people can start getting around together and stuff again, it'll be a movie that you can watch with other people and sit there and just die laughing and talk shit in other parts and have like a good time. It's going to be a really cult movie, I think.
I'd agree with that. I desperately want to see a showing of this at the Film Bar in Arizona now. So, because that crowd's always crazy with this kind of stuff anyway. So I think it'll be a blast whenever we get back there.
Yeah, I had an overall enjoyment. I have my issues. We'll get to those, but overall, I think I would watch it again, kind of thing.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah, and I went in with knowing almost nothing about this movie. When you hit us up to do it, I think I had just seen the poster for it like the day before or something like that. And if I had heard about the movie, I had forgotten about it by that point, but I didn't even watch the trailer. Like, I read the premise just to kind of see what it was about. And then I was like, well, I'm not even going to watch the trailer. I'm going to go into this movie without, knowing as little as I can about it. And I enjoyed it.
Fantastic. Don, did you like it?
I went the same. I did like it. I went kind of the same way as Ian, as far as like going in with very little information so I wasn't prejudiced or biased, for or against the movie. I liked it, but it made, and this isn't a but, it made me, or at least it put me back in that mindset of being, a kid in the 80s or even reaching the teenage years in the 90s. And my mom sitting there telling me all the stuff that's going to happen to me as far as like, don't play Dungeons and Dragons because it's about summoning the devil. Don't listen to rock music. Don't watch porn. All that type of stuff where she was like, oh, this is all going to be bad for you. It's going to lead you going to hell. And I kind of looked at her, and I didn't say it at the time. I'll say it now. I was like, you know what? Hell sounds like a pretty cool place. If
it's all RPGs and rock music.
Yeah.
Right. That's what I always think. I look at everybody that's going to be saved, and I'm like, that's not a compelling argument. I don't want to hang out with you guys for all eternity.
Yeah, shout out to Fellowship of Christian Athletes at my high school.
For anyone listening to this who hasn't seen it, we are definitely going to spoil the hell out of this.
Oh, yes.
So if you're not cool with that, you should turn it off now and go check out this film. Outside of that, let's jump in. Who wants to go first? You guys are the guests. You guys pick.
Exactly.
What do you want
Allison's
to start,
chomping at the bit. I can tell.
I know. Get into the writing.
We can start. Well, we're gonna hold off on the writing a little bit. We'll start at the beginning. Like is it shallow? I don't know. First impression, Val's eyebrows. Man, there's some thick. I know it was the 80s, but I don't remember them being that thick.
She was rocking that unibrow, though.
She was. It looked great on her. I don't know how. I don't get it.
Was that a thing in the 80s? Because I don't remember that at all. But I probably didn't pay attention to that. So.
They were thicker in the 80s because it was like, I think the 90s was like the pencil thin era. Yeah. 80s was a thicker eyebrow for sure because it was like, what was it, Brooke Shields?
Brooke Shields, yep. Yeah. I was thinking of.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Like the eyebrow queen of that time. So yeah, but she went extra thick. But it looked good on her face. It's weird.
Yeah, once you got past it, because when you first see her, you're kind of like, whoa, you're gonna pluck those eyebrows, but then you kind of got used to it. But then every once in a while, I'd catch myself like when we wouldn't see her like straight on for a minute, and then she'd come back, and that'd be the first thing. It'd be like a whoa, kind of like a jerk back moment whenever I'd see her. Her eyebrows were insane.
Yeah, I mean, she was spraying that Aquanet on, but it just wasn't.
It wasn't bigger. She wasn't teasing. You got to tease. You got to tease the shit out of that hair.
Yeah, she literally said that when she was spraying her hair. She goes, "That hair's not big enough."
But yeah, so I love how this starts with the whole feeling like a normal kind of slasher where they're going to a concert, they're running into some people they don't know, and I like that. These guys, what do they throw out? Is it a milkshake?
A milkshake.
Chocolate milkshake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throw it out the window of the car. And that's what leads to everything that happens from here on out. Like, all they had to do was not litter. That's the message of this film.
Well, not only that, but that throws you in one direction as far as, coming into this movie cold. You immediately think, okay, well, these girls are going to get victimized because of that. I guess the way a lot of movies have been shot before, especially in the 80s. They're the ones who are going to be the victims of all this stuff because, all these breadcrumbs that are being left are about, these teenagers are getting killed by this satanic cult. And, it comes on the TV or the newspaper or whatever when they're at the gas station. They travel to the concert and as those guys throw the chocolate milkshake, it's, you guys are assholes. I can't believe you did this. And I'm sitting thinking like, all right, you're setting me up to think that they're going to be the victims here and they're going to fight their way out of this.
Yeah. Even the gas station attendant, he's like, oh, be careful. And they're like, you don't think we can take care of ourselves? Like, and that's it. And that was the general consensus. Mm-hmm. Even now, honestly, is obviously you can't because you're girls. You can't take care of yourselves. Right. You got to watch out. Everything you do is could potentially be harmful to you.
Well, yeah, and he also played the gas station attendant. He was the 80s trope of the guy who warns everybody, right. Watch out, be safe out there. But as opposed to like any Friday the 13th movie or anything else like that, like he was warning the people who are actually going to be doing the killer. That would be like the gas station attendant be like, "Don't go to Camp Crystal Lake," and he's talking to Jason Voorhees or something.
I kind of want to see that. That would be great.
Yeah.
You don't want to go up there and play hockey, boy. Oh, I'm not going for hockey. I'm going to murder some teenagers.
That's a nice COVID-19 mask you're wearing. Full coverage.
That's not going to work. There's holes all
There's
over.
holes everywhere.
But yeah, you talk about how it sets you up to think one way. And that's really what I like about it, because it does follow that exact normal trope where these girls are given the chance to get out of it, but they go confront this van load of guys instead, right? And that's so often like you're given all these doors to get out, and now you're on this path and you're screwed. But this movie's fucking with you at this point because the girls are the problem. And I love that we buy into it. It's really well done, but it's not overdone. And it feels very organic and normal. But like I said, if these guys hadn't thrown out the milkshake, they might not have been chosen.
Yeah, they could have just picked some other guys there at the concert.
Yeah, they could have picked anyone. So that's kind of...
I think the real problem wasn't the milkshake. It was that they were drinking PBR. So
Yeah, that was bad.
that's why they were picked. It had nothing to do with the milkshake.
Was PBR like a drink of the like a concert drink? Like I know it was in the 90s, very grungy. Like PBR was a thing you drank if you're going to ska concerts and all that. But like, was it in the 80s?
I don't remember PBR being that popular then in the 80s. I
don't
just
either,
remember
but
it was
I was
like
10.
It's like, well,
What, you weren't at all the concerts when you were 10 years old, James?
No, not at that point.
But it almost kind of seemed like some of the stuff from this movie was written by somebody who didn't live through or experience the 80s. And they're like, oh, well, this obviously PBR was big back then. Obviously, we had red Solo shot cups back then.
Which we didn't.
Yeah. That was something like in the scene where the girls take their shot at Jaeger. They used the mini Solo cups, and Allison's like, I'm pretty sure they didn't have those back then. I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. Again, like James, I was a little kid, so I wasn't taking shots. Or was I?
I used heavy glass shot glasses, people. Like none of this throwaway stuff.
I think if anything, they would have used those Dixie cups that
the little paper ones,
like mouthwash and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wrote the same thing down in my notes. I was like, this is someone's idea of what the 80s look like. And nothing against the film, because I liked what they did throughout the film. But there were a couple of moments like that kind of took me out. But what I thought was, at least thinking about this, I really got the impression, like Ian said, that this is someone's idea in the early 2000s or even 20 teens of what the 1980s look like. But you had enough freedom to have those inaccuracies there because of the the misdirection that's going on with the story.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where the 80s is so far removed at this point, because if you look, there was 88, 89 that it took place. And for somebody to already be in their 20s at that point, to be going to concerts and things like that, they would be late 50s, 60s now? Like, because it's so far removed. So they're looking at it as, well, we can just do it what we think the 80s was kind of like. And nobody's, like, our target audience isn't going to know any better because they didn't grow up in that time.
Yeah, what they know about the 80s came from, like, Stranger Things, since that made the 80s, like, super popular right now. Like, I wish when I was a child, like in the 80s, everything that was that cool then as it seems to be now. But I guess that's because we've all grown up and we're in charge, so we get to pick what's cool and what's not cool now, as opposed to back during the 80s when things that the geek culture thought was cool, would get the shit beat out of you.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Well, and I kind of wonder if this is how like my parents felt with, like, I don't know, anything that showed the 50s or the 60s. Like, it was always this, like, super positive, happy time, like, even like Back to the Future. I mean, I know, of course, that's over the top anyway, but, like, that's how I feel about, like, the representations of the 50s and 60s, And I kind of wonder, like, were my parents thinking the same thing? Like, holy shit, I wish it had been that great. Or I wish that we'd been hanging out at the malt shop all day. I had to fucking work every day, Like,
well, yeah, and that's like nowadays it is kind of like the late 80s, early 90s, like everything, we're getting all the stuff that's like set in the 80s and how it's looked back upon. But like in the late 80s, early 90s, we had all the things like Happy Days, and we had, all the, like Stephen King, half of his stuff when he wrote about like his childhood took place like in that time era. So it's like we're now hitting that point where now that people our age are the ones that are writing and directing the stuff, we're looking at the 80s like how the people back whenever we were kids, how they looked at like the 50s and 60s
Right.
and stuff.
Yeah, we have that nostalgia film. So, of course, everything's great because we're not seeing it for what it actually was. We're just remembering it as the stuff that we enjoyed and picking and choosing what we want to represent.
Yeah, we're looking at it definitely through like rose-colored glasses. Which, like you're saying, like I could see, like you're saying, like, oh man, I wish I could hang out at the malt shoppy all day and eat a hamburger, but no, I had to go out and work because that's what happens.
Well, and I mean, even like you brought up Stephen King, and he's such a great example of this to me because I feel like this is what's happening with the 80s. We get like these stereotypical things that have to be in things, even like the Goldbergs or whatever. Like we got all these crazy representations of how things were, right? And then Stephen King would do it. Like he'd always have like the greasers were in everything. Like I don't know what these greasers did to King when he was a kid, but they must have been fucking dicks because they made like every book after that.
Well, greasers had to have been like the jocks of like the 80s and 90s because everybody hated them for the most part. You hated them. Like they're always assholes. They're always picking on everybody.
Yep.
I mean, so like greasers are like the 80s jocks. It had to that had to have been how it was, at least in most people's cases.
But I feel like that's the same thing that's happening. Whether it's Back to the Future or Stephen King, there's the greaser kids that are the dicks. Like there's always these stereotypes and they get repeated. And now we're doing it with 80s stuff and soon we'll do it with 90s stuff or whatever. And I find it fascinating how we use these cliches so much that becomes what that time must have been. And then now we're ending up with this film looking at the 80s and it's inserting these things that we take for granted as having happened. But then like you and everyone in this conversation lived through it and we're like, well, not quite. All right, Allison, where do you want to go next?
Let's go. I mean, we can go start with just the overall plot. I love me a satanic panic type movie or anything around a cult it has my heart. It's probably one of my top favorite genre of horror movies is like the cult satanic panic type of movies. Like I love it. And this movie has so much of it, but I don't think it pushed far enough.
I agree.
It wasn't enough.
Yeah, in comparison to Satanic Panic, like you were talking about, I wanted more of that. To where you get the minister on television talking about, whatever religious indoctrination and the stuff that he's going off on, and all the evils of society. And I'm just waiting. I'm like, man, there's got to be. You're going to have a really tight hook at the end where we really not necessarily beat you over the head with it, but you kind of have that same level of people that are involved in this as you did in Satanic Panic, where it was like the entire subdivision of the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Here we only get the girls that are part of it, and then the minister, where they have this discussion after they drug the guys and wake them up and say, hey. I'm sorry, after they talk to their friend and say, hey, you're part of this now. We've got, it's our turn to do it. There are all these people that have been doing it in the congregation. I'm like, shit, I want to see the rest of the congregation. I want to see all the other people that have been doing this. Like, they happen to be watching from another room and saying like, oh, that good job, girls, you did it. You're part of us now. We're going to rid the world of evil. And I kind of left unfulfilled with that part, or at least that opportunity.
The funny thing about you bringing up Satanic Panic is Grady Hendrix wrote, or at least co-wrote, that movie. And this story itself for We Summon the Darkness almost seems like it's a story that he would write, because he always writes where it takes place in the late 80s, early 90s, or most of his stories at least. And then he always writes from a woman's or a female point of view. So this seemed more like a story that he would have written as opposed to Satanic Panic.
Yeah, I feel like if he had written it, it would have been so amazing.
Yeah, and I feel like in some ways I like that they didn't go far enough. In like, I don't want Alexandria Daddario's character. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. I just
Alexis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I knew it was close to her real name.
Yeah, because it's.
I don't want Alexis to know everything about what it would actually be like to have a satanic sacrifice set up or whatever you want to call it. You know, I like that she goes very stereotypical with it and has some of this stuff. But I do want to see more of the pastor pushing this,
Right?
And I want to see more of like people freaking out watching it on TV and like going to church for the first time, and like I want to see that part of it, you know. And we definitely don't get that in this. What I do like about how it's our turn and our congregation's been doing this, I like that it sets it up if there was going to be a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you can easily go to someone else and keep doing this. And I think that's a great marketing ploy.
And that was the thing is you only get really a lot of like the religious propaganda from the pastor like twice, I think. Is like you see him on TV and then you hear him on the radio, and I wanted more of that. They should have had more snippets of him with his religious propaganda and pushing it. And then they mention their congregation only once by name at the end. It's the Daughters of the Dawn, and it's for wayward girl. I was like, this is like, why is this not the focus? Like that would have been amazing. Like this is where it should have gone, is like pushed harder for that cult. Like they should have been fully indoctrinated. And that was another thing, is I felt like the three girls, for this being like a Daughters of the Dawn, like they were not indoctrinated enough to have been already allowed to kill people. Like as someone who kind of sort of grew up in a fanatical religious cult type of situation, you don't get your secrets until you're like fully in it. Like you have to be fully indoctrinated, on board. And even the Alexis and Val, because I know Bev was kind of new, but even Val and Alexis weren't in it to win it kind of thing. Like they didn't seem like they were fully on board with the Daughters of the Dawn. And like that, if they had pushed that harder and made them more fanatical, it would have made a better backstory, I think, for why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah. Even if you went with like Val being way more into it, because like Alexis has another reason to want to do this, and we'll get to that. But like I can get why she wouldn't be as fully committed to the congregation, because her other reasoning could overshadow that. But Val being 100% into it would have been awesome. That's a great call.
Yeah, and like with it being a religious code, like Val, like I see like a lot of times with things like that, you are allowed to break the rules so long as it furthers your cause. So them drinking with the guys, I get it. But like Val smoking, I was like, why would she be smoking? I'm pretty sure that would be against their religious cult type fanatical situation. And she did it not around other people. She did it in the van on the way there. So I feel like the van ride over should have just been that normal like road trippy where they stopped, they got Twinkies, whatever. And they didn't do things that would have been kind of against their religious beliefs until they were in front of people as a show. Like how they talked about concerts they'd been to, and Alexis couldn't think of her first concert because she hadn't actually been to these terrible rock concerts that you're not supposed to go to. So Bev was like, yeah, it was Scorpions, remember? Like she had to like fill in for her, like fill the blanket. And so I felt like if they had pushed that a little bit harder and made it so that they only did it if it was for the cause kind of thing.
Wow.
But that's something they do with movies a lot of the times. Like when you have like a double agent or something like that going on, like, and I hate it because they did it in the movie Catch Me If You Can, I think it is. There's the one with the magicians with Woody Harrelson. They had Mark Ruffalo, like.
Oh yeah, that wasn't Catch Me. It was the one with the four horsemen.
Yeah.
Now
what was that?
You see me.
Now you see me. Like, because I had Mark Ruffalo. He was like sitting in his apartment, like trying to crack the case, and then at the end of the movie, he's the mastermind. And it's like, why would you be sitting here going through all this paperwork trying to crack this case when you're the one who did it? And they do that a lot of the times in movie to throw you off. And I understand why they want to do stuff to throw people off. But like, if literally nobody's around, like you're saying, like, why would she just be smoking? Unless maybe she figured, I can get away with it because maybe she's not 100% committed to the cult. And she's like, well, since, I have to be a bad girl, maybe I'm just going to do it. And if anybody says anything, well, I was just having to be in character, even though she was in the car smoking. And she also had the smallest bladder in the entire universe.
Yeah.
She literally peed like every 5 minutes. And that was hilarious.
That was great character development, honestly. I loved it.
Yeah, we went on a road trip with a guy. We went up to Salt Lake Comic-Con, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago with a guy. And he literally every half an hour had to stop. Like, it took us forever to get up there because every time we were passing, like, hey, can we stop and pee? It's like, dude, you took a piss like half an hour ago.
Ian, you told me
why are you having to pee again? Yeah.
Stop drinking.
Sorry.
I get nervous on road trips.
Like the best times going up there is we tried to make him like pass out in the back of the car so that he wouldn't have to pee. Like, we'd let him pee once and then fall asleep. Like, it's like hit him with the chloroform so he sleeps the rest of the way.
Hey guys, what are the funnel and the bottle for?
But yeah, her having to pee like all the time was hilarious. Like, she peed at the gas station, then she peed on the side of the road after the milkshake, and then they get to the house and she's having to pee. Something else happened, then she has to run and use the bathroom. It's like
they were like in the middle of the dudes like locked in the pantry. They're panicking. She's like, I gotta pee. Like, can you stop? Do you know what's going on right now?
Well, I mean, they stabbed the one guy in the neck, and then like, come on, all of us, let's just go to the bathroom. And she's peeing while they're talking. Yeah. There's a great character trait that I have.
It was. I think out of like all the sub characters, like they really worked on her a lot. Like her, like, because that was hilarious. Her bushy ass eyebrows was hilarious. And then like they did a lot of stuff with her that was just hilarious. Because like the pee thing was just like, and it's too real. Like, everybody knows somebody who literally has to pee like every 5 minutes.
Well, then the Aquanet backfiring on her was really
I was going to say, like during her death, wouldn't it have been like, I just peed myself, like,
or you just saw the darkened area. Yeah.
But man, all right, so let's back up to the boys come to the house that Alexis's parents own. And, they have this big campfire outside and they're sitting around. And there's this scene where they play Never Have I Ever. And I really like this scene because there's so much characterization in it. I wouldn't say it's fantastic dialogue, but the way that they conveyed backstory really worked for me here, especially with Bev. Like when she talks about how she's been arrested for shoplifting and they're like, what did you shoplift? And they're making fun of it. And she's like, food. Like, that's great backstory. So easily told. And, it works really well you get a feel for each person as they're playing this. And then you get the reveal where Alexis is like, never have I ever drugged somebody's drink.
Yeah, I love how every single Never Have I Ever targeted somebody to give character development to that person in some form of backstory, some form of something that they did, because each person targeted somebody else with their Never Have I Ever. And then the Never Have I Ever drugged somebody's drink, and immediately guys are like, oh no, we've never, that's a bad thing to do, we wouldn't do that. Like, immediately they're like, no, like they're just assuming it's the guys who did it.
Right.
Yeah, I like how Ivan, like, they went to him and he's like, oh no, don't look at me. And then like when the chick drinks, he's just like, oh really? Like, he thought it was hot at first, like, oh really?
Right.
You drug some dudes. And then like when it slowly just starts rolling into his brain,
it was like, you didn't have to drug us to get us and you're like, dude, no, what are you doing? Why would you think that?
Oh, you thought we were going to have sex with you guys? Oh, why would you think that? And at that point, when they were doing that line, Allison was like, I fucking love this scene. Like, she's like, this scene is so amazing.
That was great. I loved this scene. This is probably like one of my top 3 scenes in this film. As soon as this hit, I was like internally cheering. I was like, wow, that was a great little way to reveal the twist. But, so then we tie them up and What are they even in? What is that room? Like, I'm sorry, I live in a small house, so I have no idea
like a
what this
dining
room is.
Is it a dining room or is it kind of like a
like a green room?
I thought it
yeah,
was a
kinda like a
sunroom or
sunroom,
something.
like a
yeah,
Like a
sunroom, yeah.
sunroom? Okay. Sure.
because it had
You
a
know,
lot
that
of
makes
windows.
it even more interesting that that's where they decide to do this. I thought it was so weird that they do this in the room with all the windows.
Right.
I mean, yeah, there's nobody out there, but there could be.
Especially because they specifically parked at the end of the driveway and didn't go all the way up because she was like, oh, I don't want people to know we're here. Like, why is parking at the end of the driveway not going to tell people you're here? And who's going to think you're here anyway, since supposedly you have this house to yourself?
My stepmom, but we'll get to that. So
Yeah,
you know,
at first when they're well, sorry, I was going to say at first when they were rolling up to the house, or when she was talking to the guy, she's like, "Oh yeah, my dad lives like half an hour from here," and we're like, "Really? Like, are they just going to bring them out to the middle of nowhere? Or are they going to break into a house?" Because they clearly drove for longer than half an hour to get there originally, because they're doing like their little mini road trip thing for the concert, and then
Yeah, so I was just wondering too, like, where were they coming from?
And I'm guessing like her mom's house, because her parents are split. So I'm guessing she had stayed with her mom, and like her other buddy didn't recognize this house. He's like, "Oh, your house is so huge." And then she was like looking at, there was a scene where when they go inside, with the picture, and it's just like, well, clearly her other buddy had never been to this house before. So it's just like, did she never bring her here? Or is this just like, and if I was convinced that this was going to be just like a rando house that she just found and they're just getting into, but obviously it wasn't.
No, that's how I felt too. I thought it was going to be totally random, and like the little kid pictures weren't even really her, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was pleasantly surprised by that. But I think it's weird that they choose this room. Like, I get it. It's kind of off to the side or whatever, but it's all windows. What a fucking weird place to tie people up to kill them.
Maybe Johnny Knoxville didn't want the rest of the house to get too destroyed and had the blood over it, because he was going to have to live there after this. So maybe he's like, you know what, do it in the sunroom because it's easier. We can just replace all the windows instead of, messing up the living room or my bedroom or the pantry, because obviously the pantry is the best place in the entire house.
I feel like this has happened before in the pantry. And then they used it as an excuse to redo the pantry and make it nicer. Maybe this is what they do before they renovate rooms.
Cops will never catch on that each room has somebody die in it.
Well, they don't normally call the cops.
I literally had that happen to me when I was a teenager.
You tied somebody up in the sunroom?
Well, no. What had happened was one of my friend's parents were out of town, and she wasn't supposed to have anybody over. And of course, what do? You have a bunch of teenagers over. And long story short, we ended up burning a spot of the carpet in like the living room, because, you play with fire, obviously, because adults aren't around. And luckily there was a storm that weekend, and it blew one of the pillars off their house. So when the parents came home, like, we cleaned it up the best that we could, but it was still, you could see that the carpet was burned. But they submitted it to the insurance, and so they got to like redo their entire living room. And so her parents told her, it's like, I don't know what the hell happened this weekend, but next time, can we maybe have something happen to the kitchen floor, because we need to get that redone as well. But it was kind of like the same situation where it's like they knew like the story, because the story was, oh well, the power went out, so I had a candle and I dropped the candle and it burnt the carpet. And that's why there's a carpet burn or whatever. So clearly her parents knew that was a bullshit story, but they got, new carpet for the living room. So they're like, maybe next time something can happen in the kitchen, so it's plausible that maybe Johnny Knoxville's getting his entire house remodeled just because, he's turning it into the entrance. He's like, come up in here and kill somebody in the pantry, so that we can get the pantry redone. Now it's time to do the sunrooms. So we need to get the sunroom redone. So we need to have the murder go on in here.
Oh, man. What about you, Don? Have you ever been tied up in anybody's sunroom?
Oh, no. Next question. No, but
Next question, like you want me to change the topic or just pick a different room?
I'm messing with it. But no, when Ian was speaking about the insurance thing, it made me think about, because my mom loves ID channel, like murder mystery shit. And I remember years ago there was somebody who talked about, they had somebody in their family had been murdered, and they had this grand idea, because they had to go through the police and everything that was going on as far as cleaning it up, because they said, oh, who's going to come in the house and clean up, my uncle's blood off the floor? And they're like, you have to do that yourselves. And, I was watching this thing, and they were explaining how traumatic that was to have to go through all that stuff. And somebody in their mind, in that couple, that family, was like, oh, shit, I've got a really good business idea. We'll just follow the police around anytime they report a murder, and we'll be the cleanup crew. So they made like hundreds of thousands of dollars just cleaning up crime scenes. And, just thinking about when Johnny Knoxville comes in and the police, the sheriff's officer is on the floor, blood everywhere. His reaction is kind of like, fuck, who am I going to get to clean this up? As opposed to, because even when he gets mad about it, it's like, there is a dead sheriff on the floor, blood everywhere. But his reaction wasn't, I'm disappointed in you for fucking this up, which he was, but it's, how the fuck are we going to clean this up? The kitchen looks so nice. The sun.
It was recently renovated.
Yeah. It looks so nice. Why would you do this?
I want to
go ahead.
I just wanted to say I want to back up really fast to that scene in the sunroom where Alexis reveals what's really happening, because this was a great moment for me. Hopefully it was for you guys. She's got them tied up, and they're freaking out because they know that this satanic cult has been killing people all over. And then she's like, I don't give a shit about any of that. That's not real. And she reveals that it's their church congregation and how they're doing this to incite satanic panic so that everyone's fearful and comes to the church. And holy shit, man. Like, I was sitting there literally like on the edge of like literally cheering this in my spare bedroom while I'm watching this alone at night, I love this, for lack of a better term, I love this twist. What did you guys think of this moment?
I really like this part. Oh, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll go. But yeah, I really like that part because, I assumed that, it's kind of obvious that the girls were going to be the killers in the movie. But I figured they were going to do the whole, play out the whole satanic cult vibe of it. But I like that they did do that twist that, no, they're not. They're super religious and they're all about the JC. And they're doing this bad stuff just to get everybody, on board. I like that they went that way instead of the typical way that most other movies would have done it, is just have it be, a satanic cult killing people and stuff.
I like that it really pushed the idea that the satanic panic was a fraud. It was completely it was the churches creating a boogeyman to make people come to them. And so if there's not these actual Satanists out there doing this stuff, we got to do it for them so that it makes it so they come to us and they get saved. And so I love the idea of the invention of the boogeyman essentially, and pushing that narrative themselves to force their beliefs, even though that whole thing is against their beliefs. We can do it because it furthers our cause.
It's always an exception.
But yeah, I had the same reaction to it, I had that reaction as far as you always have to have that boogeyman that's out there to scare people into your side and coming to your side. But as I was watching this, and I told James this earlier, for me, this movie was growing up with significantly religious people in around me, whether it was family or people I went to school with. And it was always the shit that's wrong, and this is the bad stuff that's going to happen to you if you participate in this. I even have a high school friend. Well, we were friends in high school. We're not friends now. Who had gotten so religious at one point where he was one of those people that would speak out or protest against yoga because somehow the way that you could, I guess, commune with the devil or whatever bullshit that they believe in. It makes you more open once you can flex your body in a certain way. That's the way that you can commune with the devil. That type of shit. But for me, as I'm watching this, I'm just keep hearing my mom's voice. Nothing against my mom, but she would tell me stuff like this in the 80s and the 90s, like, oh, well, you can't listen to this because it's going to make you, closer to Satan or the devil or whatever. Don't play Dungeons and Dragons. Don't do this. And when I started listening to music that she didn't approve of, we started having those talks of, well, I need to talk to you and see exactly what your frame of mind is about Jesus and about the devil and exactly where you are. I'm like, Mom, I don't care either way. I really don't care. Okay, well, we're going to church. So every Sunday morning, my routine was be as fucking quiet as possible so my mom does not wake up on time to go to church. Because there were people like that everywhere, at least in that church, who were convinced that anything you did was, if you used a credit card, that was a sign of the beast, and you were going to end up going to hell because everybody's using the same type of money. You're being controlled, which I'm sure these are the same people who believe in 5G conspiracies with pandemics. So,
wow.
Well, all I know is I don't have a 5G tower at my house, and I don't have the flu, or the coronavirus. So that's all the proof I need right there.
Oh man. As you were talking about your mom and the weird things that she thought with that, number one, I will apparently never be flexible enough to talk to Satan. So I guess there's that. But no, I remember my aunt and uncle wouldn't let my cousins watch the Smurfs because they thought they were like these little blue demons. And the one wore a red hat because he was closer to Satan. And it was so weird to me. Like as a kid, I was just like, but they're just Smurfs. They're fine, And I remember like her freaking out on my mom because I watched the Smurfs. And I look at it now and I'm just like, holy shit, man. Like we don't give a shit about people starving or not having houses, but don't watch these little blue demons over here, And God, it's so crazy how we get stuck on this shit as a society or a religion or whatever else and don't do the shit that actually makes sense.
James, welcome to humanity.
Right. Can I get a refund and I'll just go ahead and leave? But anyway, so after that scene, we get that bathroom scene we already talked about where the girls go to discuss how Bev's gonna make the next kill. Mm-hmm. And instead the boys escape and they make their way into the most amazing pantry of all time. This pantry was apparently built by the people that sell the same home security devices in The Purge.
And safe house or safe room? Was that it? Safe room?
Yeah. Right.
This is like a Purge prequel then. This is like the ultimate prequel.
But yeah, what's going on with this room, Ian? Like, why?
I don't know. It's insane. Like when they first went in there, I told Allison, I was like, well, and the girls are hitting the door, couldn't get in. I was like, I just set it on fire. And Allison assumed I was doing it from the guy's point of view.
Yeah.
She's like, well, would they have anything in there to catch it on fire? I was like, no, I'm the chicks. Like, that's what I do. I just burn the fucking house down then. And then guess what? You get burned up inside. It's like, no matter what they did, they could not get in. And then, they tried the raid under the door, which was hilarious too. Like, I thought that was a good,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it did.
That.
Yeah, they did a lot of stuff like as much crap we want to give them about them being locked in the pantry for, a quarter of the movie, kind of like in The Hunger Games when Katniss stayed in a tree for the entire book. It worked for these guys. Like these chicks could not get in there at all, and these guys, they were determined to stay in there at no matter what cost. And like I said, I would have just burned it down. I would have just poured something instead of when they blew the fire under the door. I would have just caught the door on fire and then burn the rest of the house down. Who cares at that point? They're dead. It'll still look like a satanic cult did it.
Yeah,
right?
But then her dad loses his house that his congregation paid for.
Then he'll renovate and have a new one.
Yeah,
insurance might cover it.
Well, that's
I'm sure
true.
he paid for that satanic.
Yeah.
I'm sure he paid for that satanic cult burning your house down clause in his insurance.
The act of an antichrist.
Yeah, and the burning the house down is not going to burn the barn down where all the money is anyway.
What's up with that?
Allison. Yeah, it was a barn is what she called it, but it looked more like a boathouse. Well, like a guest house or like a boathouse. I mean, technically, I guess it was a boathouse because it did have a boat in it. But it was just like, it was so weird. It wasn't like, I would have never referred to that as a barn. I would have just called it maybe a shed or the building out back, but I wouldn't have called it a barn because in my eyes it did not. Yeah, it did not look like a barn at all.
It was a fancy barn.
No kidding. I grew up in Nebraska. We don't have barns like that. That's for sure. Jeez. But yeah, so they send Bev out there and she finds all the secrets and learns everything. She finds all this money and basically she gets a free explanation of what's really going on, right? That this congregation cares more about money and not so much about actually saving people. And she's not so hip on slaughtering these boys anymore. I know you guys, Ian and Allison, we talked a lot about what we liked and didn't like about this movie and some of the weird shit. Walk me through how you felt when she finds this stuff out in the so-called barn.
I will give some props to a unique weapon with which to choose. Of all the things in the barn, she finds a boat propeller and decides, this is going to be what I'm going to use. I'm going to tote this around the entire rest of the movie. She picks this thing up multiple times. She doesn't grab an axe. She doesn't grab a machete. She doesn't grab a chainsaw. It's just nothing. She grabs a boat propeller to take back to the house. Like, why? Like, who would do that? Who would choose a boat propeller that you have to rev up?
And don't run out of gas while you're there.
Yeah. I think it was hilarious, honestly. I thought it as soon as she showed up, I was like, what the fuck? This is great.
I mean, at least
perfect.
It's unique.
Yeah.
What about you, Don? What did you feel about this scene?
I was going to say that my critique, or at least the reveal is my critique, and this is nothing against anybody who's religious. I have no problem with it. I have a problem with televangelists and people who exploit very vulnerable people. And so all I saw here, and I'm not going to mention any ministers because I don't want us to get sued, but all I saw were the guys, the slick guys in the suits with nice hair. And apparently when people are in trouble, they close their doors and don't let anybody in. Or they tell them things like, hey, it's okay. It's Easter. It's Sunday. It's whatever religious holiday. It doesn't matter how sick you are, how poor you are. Come on in. So for me, I was sitting there. I'm like, this is the perfect villain to deal with, and it's not necessarily Johnny Knoxville's character, the minister. It's that mentality as far as like the exploitation of people based off of their fear or based off of you basically just duping them. But just to talk about the piece of equipment that Val picks, I laughed my ass off when she showed up with that shit, because it's she had it on and then like buzzed them, and I'm saying, this is funny as shit. Like Allison said, of all the things she could have grabbed out in this area, she grabs a boat motor with the propeller to attack people, or at least to fight them off, and wouldn't have been my first pick. But it got the job done. It got the job done for her.
You would think that would wear her out pretty fast.
Well, I don't know how heavy an outboard is, like that size, but that was kind of a question. Like, well, maybe she does CrossFit or something. This will be the new thing at the gym.
CrossFit was a thing in the 80s.
No, I mean,
maybe she invented it.
I think it was all those like aerobics.
She had arms of steel.
Maybe she's watching those BBC workout videos.
She used her Thigh Master on her arm.
I just think it's funny that he has this big, huge house. They have the safe upstairs full of money and coke. And out of all the places he's going to hide his money and all the incriminating evidence is in a boat in his barn covered up by a
Tarp
blanket or a tarp or whatever. It's like literally everything is there. It's almost like he was being set up, like how easy it was that he just said, I'm just going to put all this stuff out here. I mean, I understand he's not expecting anybody to go in there, but like at the very least, I'm not going to hide my money that I've stolen somewhere where, especially something like a tackle box, anybody could just pick up and walk off with it, and then also leave it with the incriminating evidence right there.
And it doesn't even have a padlock.
Yeah. I guess he wasn't expecting anybody to break into his barn and steal his boat propeller.
Maybe he just wanted to be able to make a getaway really easily. He was going to run down, hop in the boat, take off, have all the
on
stuff
land.
With him. I don't know.
It wasn't in a dock. It was.
I know. Maybe
Johnny
that's why he
Knoxville's
thought nobody would look. Maybe that's why he thought nobody would look there. I don't know.
He's got one of those special land boats that that he was using to get away if he could.
So I want to talk about the weirdest part of this to me. And there's a lot of weird shit in this movie, but this is the part that really just like, I went, what? The stepmom shows up.
Oh, I hated that part.
And like, maybe I'm wrong. Like, you guys saw this as well. Tell me if I didn't understand this, but aren't they like going through a divorce? Like, she's not a part of this family anymore?
Yeah, that confused me.
Okay.
I didn't understand because she'd already said, oh no, I go by this name now. Like, you already changed your name, but you still have stuff here? Like, why do you still have stuff in this house?
And if you
guys are not together. Yeah.
I'm coming to get my passport. She shows up middle of the night. Where the fuck is she going that she needs her passport this second? And like, she apparently isn't with Johnny anymore, but she can just walk right in. She calls the cops because she sees everybody parked in the place that they parked so that they wouldn't be noticed. And then she goes to get her passport, and like anybody getting their passport, decides to do cocaine instead.
Well, it was the 80s.
Yes. It
so,
was.
That's true. All right, I'll give you that one.
The other thing I thought was funny was Val was like, said something to the stepmom, like, hi. And then that's when she's like, oh, well, I'm Mrs. whatever now. And it's just like, okay, so Val, when they got there, she had never been to this house before because she didn't recognize it. She talked about how big it was, and she talked about like her little baby pictures that was out. So it's like, when did Val ever really meet her stepmother to be on good enough terms to be like, oh, Mrs. Whatever their last name was. Yeah, Mrs. Butler or whatever.
Maybe
I think they kind of forgot. Yeah, maybe. It's true. And what kind of minister, gets a divorce, remarries, and then getting another divorce? Like, come on, Johnny. You're supposed to, you made a pact with God to stay with this person till death do you part, and here you are on your second marriage, and it's ending.
Well, she's spending all his money on coke.
Obviously. And that was another thing. It seemed like she was supposed to be like going on a trip out of the country. The house was going to be empty. So I was like, well, maybe they're getting a divorce. She's still technically living there because she still has her stuff there. She's going on this trip out of the country. So that's why he's like, okay, you can use the house because no one will be there. I'll make sure I'm not there, whatever. And so she comes back to get her passport because she forgot it because she's on coke and she's an idiot. So she goes upstairs, she opens the safe, which has her passport and a bunch of coke and a bunch of money.
Mm-hmm.
And you see her take the coke and do the coke, but she's just going to leave. And I guess because she plans on coming back, maybe that's her money that's up there. I don't know. It was just a weird scene. Like, it was just really weird.
Yeah, she didn't take all the coke either. She just took like a bag of it and then proceeded to snort it all right then and there.
Yeah.
She used one of the $100 bills to consume it.
To coke, to snort the coke.
And then she also, I like how she used her pinky nail at one point too, and like had to take a little bit. I was like, oh yeah, you had to add the you had to add the pinky nail in there. I was like, way to go.
Well, they got that 80s part right.
Yeah, and then I don't like. She was leaving, was like, "Oh, just tell the cops whatever." And she's like, "They're like, what?" I just really think it's weird, like that he has this wife that is not the ideal for a pastor's wife, and him being this religious fanatic, even though he knows it's all bullshit because he's obviously using it as a scam, he would have still had this persona to keep, and he needs that perfect wife and perfect daughter to push his religious narrative. And for her to be this money grubby, like coked out wife, like that just doesn't fit. It just was weird to me. And it's not something I think I would have ever seen growing up in fanatical religions where the pastor's wife was this way. And even if it was just in private, like it's something he wouldn't have I feel like he wouldn't have tolerated. And so I think that whole scene kind of pushed me out of the idea of this being a religious fanatical cult type thing that's trying to push their narrative and get people to be saved by creating this boogeyman. And this whole infrastructure, I think, would have fallen apart if all of your members aren't in it to win it, like aren't fully indoctrinated. And I just thought that was weird. Like this whole stepmom thing was just weird.
I think that also really feeds into, you brought up the perfect daughter. Well, I don't know that Alexis tries as hard if she knows that he accepts somebody like her stepmom. Like what's the point of being perfect if he doesn't care about that? But it would make it more important to her to be perfect and to get his attention if she's noticing everyone around him has to be perfect to be in his life.
Right. If that's the reason, like maybe her mom and him are no longer together because she didn't fit the bill for what he needed. And a lot of times people who are that like charismatic preacher, like cult leader, fanatical, whatever, like they want people who are easy to mold. And that's what they're looking for. They're looking for victims, which is why he has these daughters of the dawn, these wayward girls, because they're so used to being victimized that he can further his agenda with them.
Definitely. Yeah, especially like the one chick who was homeless and all the other stuff, and they brought her in to like save her, so they were able. It just makes her easier to manipulate.
All right, where do you guys want to go next?
The sheriff was a bumbling fool, as normal per these movies. Like he shows up, the girl Alexis comes out and is like, "Oh, sorry, everything's cool." Like he's smart enough to realize like shit's not on the up and up. But then when she runs in the house, he just runs after her. Like, you're not going to call this in. You're not going to get any backup. You're just going to run in a house after somebody. Like, what? Even in the 80s, like, come on. Like, there was no protocol for this.
Yeah, we were wondering, like, did they have,
like CB radios?
CB radios on them back in the 80s so they could talk further away, because like nowadays they're able to, but I'm not sure at what point they got radios. I mean, he could have easily just got back into his squad car and was like, "Hey, I have a runner," or "I need backup," or send somebody out here, and then ran into the house. But he didn't. He just chased after her.
Yeah, I thought that was really weird that he didn't call for backup at all. I think it's weird that she runs. Like, she could have easily. Like, we've seen her be manipulative and get people to do what she wants, right? Why did she not fucking do that with the cop? She could have been like, "Oh yeah, come on in, talk to my stepmom." She could have. I mean, I know she's panicking, and that's the point, that she's not making good decisions. Not good decisions to begin with, but she's not making decisions that meet her goals as much anymore. But I still feel like she would understand the gravity of this moment, and she would bring him in under a different pretense to try to get the jump on him.
Or just be like, "No, my stepmom left. She had to catch a flight. It's just me. Let me grab my stuff." Like, she has to have something that ties her to this house. This is her father's house. It's not like this is a stranger's house. This is, in fact, she could have gone in and be like, "Here's my baby pictures. Like, here's me. I live here."
But I also like the fact that the sheriff or the deputy doesn't believe her and breaks from that idea that, oh, she's just this innocent young girl. So, hey, everything's fine. If you say everything's fine, then I'll just go ahead and let them know we got a false alarm or got a false call or tip or whatever. Because she even makes that comment, and I made sure to write this down, where she says to him, "I'm a victim." And I'm just like, you got to be kidding! Like that's so awesome! Like to even throw that in there, to at least to get over on at least try to get over on the cop, as far as why she doesn't need to be questioned about her motivation or her ability to be in the house, or her motivations to not want to talk to him.
And I wonder if the movie was trying to push that she would have been treated differently if she was dressed differently, but because she's dressed like all of these Satan worshiping metalheads, that's why he doesn't trust her.
Ooh, I like that.
Well, even the stepmom brings it up. She's like, "What are you wearing?" She's like, "It's a costume. We're having a costume party." So it makes me question, is this then the stepmom's not in on this shit either?
Which is weird. It's like I said, the stepmom's is really weird character to have just in general.
I feel like it was really it was about the coke. Like, we need a character that's going to do coke, They
had to explain the coke write-offs.
Well, they also had to explain the
like, we have all this coke, so it's like, how can we explain this? We have to have a character doing coke in the movie, or how can we explain we bought all this coke?
But yeah, they needed a reason for the cop to show up. I get that. I feel like it could have just been a neighbor, or it could have been anything, Yeah.
The other thing with the cop too is, like, in the morning when they're leaving, cops never came back out. Yeah, it's been hours. This cop has been in, not heard from for hours. You think they would have sent somebody out there to check on this guy,
right?
At some point. Like, I'm sure, like, if a cop, like, if you send a cop somewhere, they're not going to let him disappear for 4 or 5 hours and not hear anything from him. And he's probably sitting on the side of the road sleeping or something.
Yeah, whenever they take a call, like when they get a call in and the dispatcher puts it out there and they're like, "Okay, I'll get it," they're going to check on him to be like, "So what happened?"
That was one thing, like, when they went walking out in the morning, I said something about that. I was like, and so the cops never came to check on the other cop because, they hadn't heard from him for several hours at this point. So you think they would have sent somebody out there just to follow up.
And even if it's a super small town and there was one cop on duty or whatever, it's really easy to explain in dialogue,
Yeah.
So it feels so...
Yeah, he goes out on a night shift. He sleeps in his car, and he sometimes doesn't answer, the radio for a couple of hours. But it's so it's a small town, but it's quiet out here. So there are a bunch of different ways they could have excused that, but it just seems kind of like they wrote it off.
Plus, this house doesn't feel like it's probably in a neighborhood that sees a ton of crime,
right?
So it would be a little weird that your cop didn't come back.
Especially like when they think that the house was potentially getting broken into. So, and also, like, with the stepmother, like, if she was, was worried enough to call the cops because she sees a skeezy looking van on the property, would she go into the house, or would she be worried that, hey, I'm going to go into the house and there's going to be people robbing it and then I'm going to get killed? Like, would she have waited outside?
Especially with all of the satanic killings that have been happening. It's not like it's not well known. Yeah.
Again, I guess it goes back to the coke. Like, she needed the coke so bad that she not only had to postpone her trip to go get her passport and her coke, she also walked into potential home invasion to get her coke. Because you know what? Last thing that could happen is somebody go up in there and steal her coke, man.
Did they have car phones in the 80s?
Oh,
they
yeah.
did, right?
That was another thing that I brought up, is he said they do had car phones, but he specifically said cellular phone. And I was like, did they call it that? I don't remember them calling it a cellular phone.
They
I remember
really
them
didn't call
being
it that
a
until the
car
90s.
phone. Yeah, it was a car phone. So I could see him having a car phone. But
You
it was
might say
specifically
mobile phone.
called a cellular phone. I was like, I don't think that was a term.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, we really didn't use that until the 90s. But yeah, it was
And it was
car
like
phone
later
or mobile
90s
phone.
too. Yeah. Because the early 90s was like beepers.
Yeah, that's what I just think about the pager culture. You had to code everything a certain way so somebody would understand what your what you're trying to say, your message.
10 digits meant.
So then, they kill the cop, obviously. We talked about that. He gets shot in the kitchen. And then the next visitor we get is Johnny Knoxville, the preacher man. And he happens to show up just in time to catch one of the boys trying to leave the property. And the boy freaks out, and he's like, oh, this terrible thing's happening inside. And so Johnny kills him. This, again, felt really convenient, but I also really enjoyed it. Like, I'm not going to shit on this moment so much. I liked how it's instantly, Johnny's definitely in on it. He knows what's happening, and it's gone wrong. What did you guys think about this? Did you like that right away that he's in on it, or?
Yeah, I had pretty much assumed that was how it was going to be, because earlier on, he's her dad just because earlier on they give his name and then she calls the stepmom Butler. So I was like, oh, okay, Butler, that's the name of the preacher. Mm-hmm. So obviously that's her dad. And she's saying, oh, it's their congregation, so he must have put her up to it. Like, it seems like it's very obvious that he's going to be in on it. And then he shows up, and I was like, oh, he showed up to check in and see how they were doing, because it should have been completed. So I think he was supposed to come home. Everything was supposed to be done. And then he's supposed to call it in. Oh, the Satanists broke into my house, and this is what happened. And he shows up, and he's like, what the fuck happened? Mm-hmm. This is not what I was supposed to come home to.
Remember, too, in the end, he even said that his sacrifice was going to be his daughter. So he was probably coming home, was going to help them tie the stuff up, but then he was going to kill her himself because he was already worried that they're already looking at him and his congregation to doing this. So that's why he had chosen to sacrifice his daughter for it. So I'm guessing that's why he came home, was to make sure that they got it done, that he was going to kill her and then leave it there and be like, see, it's like, I'm not involved with this. And they came in, they took my daughter from me.
Yeah, definitely.
And of course, she messed it all up.
It's all she does is mess things up. No, but
she's reckless Alexis. I mean, what do you expect?
Remember what I called you when you were 6?
Like, really?
That seemed unnecessary, but okay. Like, he could have just been like, once again, reckless Alexis,
Strikes but again, yeah. Like,
it was such a weird thing to remember what I called you when you were little.
And he did it. He said it in like a really creepy way. I was like, "Oh God!"
I thought it was going in a different direction.
It was going way different. I was like, "Oh no!"
Well, at least it didn't go there. Yeah, I don't know. I love that he shows up to kill her, like Ian said. I was going to for a little bit, but yeah, it's totally. He shows up and he's just like, "What the fuck did you guys do?" And he knows he still has to clean all this up. Not just in the literal sense, but in fixing his plan. Mm-hmm. And I like how it gives him that little bit of, not anxiety, but he's definitely throwing off his game. And I like that because it gave him more depth. When I met this character at the beginning and he's on the ad or whatever you want to call it, and then, as it progresses and he shows up to the house, I thought he was going to be really one-dimensional. And he still kind of is, but it gave him a little bit more to be panicking. And I really liked it. I thought that was a nice touch.
Well, you know what? The ending of it, if we can go to the ending, sure. Where, we don't have the final girl, we have the final guy and girl. And they go to the gas station. She's buying all the first aid stuff, I'm assuming alcohol or hydrogen peroxide. And the same gas station attendant or manager is watching the news, and this is almost the point where I wish they had ended the movie, where you see that there's this news coverage of what had taken place, and it's clear that Johnny Knoxville's character, the minister, is still alive and carrying on with this idea of satanic cults. And for me, the more striking thing was not that, but the way that the gas station attendant receives it, and it's kind of like, oh, thank God, this is so horrible that stuff like this is going on. And it feeds into how we all, as society, as humanity or whatever, we sometimes panic based off of the stuff that gives us, oh my gosh, confirmation bias. I'm already feeling that way about this stuff. Somebody said something that I was thinking or feeling. Now I feel validated because I saw it. I saw it in the public, saw it on Facebook, saw it on Twitter, saw it on the news, whatever. Don't need any information to back it up. Don't need any sources cited, but they said what I was believing. So it's got to be true, and everybody else needs to believe it as well.
Definitely.
I still think that they got all of the prices wrong for the 80s.
Yes.
Like both times that they went to this gas station, it was nearly like $30, and what they spent, I was like, there's no way in the 80s this costs $30.
That would have been like $8.
Yeah.
Yeah, the first time when they bought, whatever they did, and it was like $27 or something like that. I was like, what? Really? And Allison's like, well, they got gas.
They got gas, so maybe, but that's a lot of gas.
No kidding.
And then the second time it was like, I think it was like $30-something again, and she bought like 3 or 4 things.
I think it was like $30.16.
Yeah. And she only had like 5 things on the counter that she bought.
Yeah, it was like all first aid stuff. It was the gauze. It was
the hydrogen peroxide. Yeah, like
which was kind of like weird stuff to have at the gas station. Not saying that it wouldn't have been there, but this was kind of an out of the way gas station. It wasn't like a major chain or anything like that. It wasn't a truck stop like a Love's or Flying J or anything like that. Or Stuckey's. I would have loved for it to have been a Stuckey's. But there were some things that definitely stood out as this doesn't feel 80s, but it just is what it is.
Yeah, other than the fact that it's like a satanic panic movie, which very clearly would take place in the 80s, like nothing else really pushed the 80s. This could have been like even a now time movie.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Except for you would have the cell phone issue. That would be the only thing that they would have had to change. That's the only thing that
pushed it to be the 80s, really. And then when they're driving and they look back and you see she had taken the tackle box or whatever with the money, did she take the evidence too? I didn't see those the accordion binders.
I just saw the box.
I just saw the money. Yeah.
Like, I don't think so.
Why? Why would you not take this evidence with you?
Because she was all about the money. Like when she found the money, that's when she decided that she no longer needed to be a part of the Daughters of the Dawn. When she decided that it was time for her to turn on her friends because she just wants to take the money and the guy and run.
But she even said she didn't care about them or the guys. Like she was like, I don't care. I just want this to end, because she wants to take the money and run. Well, right. She's not a heroine. She's just greedy.
Well, it might not just be that. It might be also the fact that if she had the evidence with her, then she becomes a target again. So if she goes to the press, it's almost like, who can I trust with this? But even if she does get the information out there, one, you got to deal with people who are possibly believing you or not believing you. And then two, you're going to be in the public or possibly in the public eye. And then those people that are associated with the Daughters of the Dawn or anything that's associated with them could now come after you. So I think for her, it's I can take the cash money. I can keep my anonymity. These people are still going to be doing their shit. I can't stop them anyway. I just want to be away from them. I want my own safety and security.
They're going to find her, though, because she took Alexis's car because she's stupid and didn't take the dude's van. The tires weren't slashed. We saw them when she walked out there. They lied about that. They should have taken the van.
Yeah, then she has all of Alexis's tissue and gray matter and hair and blood all over the front of
on the car.
Which, sorry, I remember in the 80s that was you'd watch Cops, and that was always one of those things. Somebody get pulled over, they're like, "Oh yeah, we noticed that you got some blood on the front of your vehicle. Can you explain that?" "I hit a dog." "Well, you see some fingernails and a human head attached to
hair."
Yeah, a pigtail attached or something.
And an ID. The one that she didn't go in and get when the sheriff asked her for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a crazy thing, like with the front of the car, with just how whatever. It's like I'd be focusing on, cleaning the front of that car up. Like if that's the car you're going to be in for a little bit, you have to get that cleaned up. And then the other thing that was funny with that whole thing is when she got back in the car with the supplies, the guy was acting like he was fine. When literally like 10 minutes earlier, when they were walking to go out to the car, he's like, "Oh, leave me! I can't make it! I can't make it!" It's like you're like you're 3 feet away from the car, and you're telling her to leave you. You can't make it. Like, get into the car. But then all it took was just like riding down the road just a little bit, and he was fine. All of a sudden, that all the stuff she was going to go buy him, he didn't need all of a sudden.
Maybe he just didn't want to be around her, and he was just trying to get out of it and take the van. But it is weird that he doesn't take the van. Like,
yeah,
I get why she doesn't take the van, but him, he should have been like, no, like,
take my van.
That's fucking weird. My big problem with this ending is the resurrection of everybody. I don't get it. You have Johnny Knoxville's character appears to be dead, and then all of a sudden he's cutting interviews and doing just fine.
He just has some scrapes and bruises.
And Alexis trips over Johnny's body, breaks through a window, face plants on the fucking cement. They go outside and walk past her. She doesn't reach out for them. She doesn't move at all. She doesn't look like her body's in a position where she's okay to stand up or anything. But as soon as they're in the car, we get this scene where Alexis stands in the middle of the fucking road. And I don't know. This bothers me. This is the one part of the movie I don't like.
I liked it because I saw it as kind of an 80s thing, or at least something you'd seen in several slasher movies where the killer or somebody, or even sometimes a victim that was running from the killer gets hit by the car. I liked it. I liked it.
Here's what I wanted, because I do want that. The 80s nostalgia monster inside of me wants that they come back moment, right?
Okay.
But I wanted, if I was writing this, they're hobbling out, they're going past her body, and she fucking reaches out and grabs them. And then Bev just goes fucking psycho and just like fucking smashes her head in. That would have been so much better to me. Just like kicking her face or the back of her head and like screaming like, "You did this, I trusted you," something like that would have been.
Or the power of Christ compels you as she's kicking her.
I knew you were going to say that, but no, definitely not that. But
she could have took the boat propeller to her head one final time.
See, exactly. I don't know. I don't like that she stands up and stands in the middle of the road. What the fuck is her plan? There's a goddamn vehicle coming at you. What was she going to do?
I feel like Alexis isn't very good at the planning portion.
No.
Just in general.
And subpar with the execution, for that matter.
I mean, it's a fun moment, but it pulled me out a bit. Knoxville, I just wanted more of an explanation. Like I wanted something that showed me he wasn't dead, and then, or like even showed him like getting up and crawling out and calling the police or whatever. Just going from him being on the ground to being interviewed was really disorienting to me.
Yeah, when he was standing there being interviewed, is like nothing was wrong with him at all. Like,
yeah,
he wasn't like showing that he was hurt or had any pain anywhere. He was just standing there like he was, normal.
It's all those years of Jackass.
That's what I said when I literally said that when he first walked up to the guy outside when he was coming home and they're talking. I was like, "I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass," and he shoots him in the stomach.
And Margera took that shot way better.
Yeah.
But yeah, we missed Val's death. I mentioned it earlier. We were going to talk about it, but do one of you want to talk about this death? I love this death.
It was great. It really was. Other than like the fire looked a little fake, but I mean it was obviously. But like other than that, I thought it was great. Especially like I think her character was the best character of all of the characters. It had the most depth. It had the most like quirks, and it felt the most real as a person. Because the whole time she's like, "What do we do?" And she's like, "Oh, I guess Alexis like, we got to stick to the plan. Later on, she's like, okay, I guess we stick to the plan. This is what we're doing. So she's like really going for it, and then to get lit on fire
from all the hairspray.
Just catches, which is a very 80s thing. Several people caught on fire in the 80s due to hairspray.
Absolutely. No, I loved it.
I just thought with her smoking so much, I was expecting it at one point. I'm like,
yeah,
she's gonna come on. There's gonna be a cigarette or something. She's gonna. It's like that's a lot of hairspray to have in your hair with being around all these cigarettes. It's gonna happen. I was not disappointed with what happened to her.
Her biggest mistake, though, is she didn't, remember from the 80s the stop, drop, and roll. She shook her hands, ran around in circles. Then I think she ran upstairs. I'm not really sure where she fell down to die at.
Herself. Yeah,
probably. Maybe she's still alive too. Maybe she peed and it got on her hair and put it out.
If there's a sequel, I hope she's in it.
With just like scars on her face from the burns, a wig.
That'd be great.
Her eyebrow one's gone.
Oh. Well, that would be the whole eyebrow.
Well, half of the one.
That's
it
why
burned enough just to make two
in the 90s. They burned off in the 80s.
Yeah.
Oh man! So my notes are exhausted. Does anybody else have anything left?
I want to say I feel like I'm going to do a little victim blaming that this is the boys' fault. First of all, they antagonized. They threw that. I feel like they threw that milkshake on purpose. They saw people on the side of the road because they had stopped or they were driving. They drove past them. They were like, "Oh, let's nail them with the milkshake." That was kind of the thing. I think was like a drive-by, whatever. And so I think they did it on purpose. Then they got called out on. And then if you notice, when the concert is over, the girls are like, all right, we're going to go back to our car now and stuff. And they're like, well, hey, why don't we hang out some more? Like they instigated going over to their house. The girls didn't invite them until after they requested it.
So you're saying they're given opportunities to leave and they don't take them?
Yeah.
Jeez. Huh. Do either of you feel like that's right or wrong, or do you have any other input on that?
I agree, because even when they give that, I can't remember if it was Ivan or Kovacs, or I think it was Ivan's character. When they're called out about the milkshake, he's like, "Oh, well, we're just having fun, we just screwed around. We didn't mean to scare you." Or he said like, "Oh, we were just trying to scare you or goof off or whatever." But even then, it's kind of like, it's still kind of a dick move. Like who throws a milkshake out of a moving vehicle onto another moving vehicle, and it's like, yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, because you could have killed them. What if they veered off the road and died because you threw
this movie would be very different. Very different
movie.
Well, yeah, and I think it was Bev that even said this. Like, we could have had an accident, and then one of the guys even said something like, "Oh, we're just not trying to scare, or we didn't mean to scare you or something." And pretty sure it was Alexis was like, "Do we look scared? No, we're just pissed that you threw a milkshake at our car."
Oh, that's really interesting that she's the one that says, "Do we look scared?" Because you're right, she does. And that kind of plays in deeper with, everything that's really going on and the image she's trying to convey. Huh. I like that.
Yeah, and I really liked that the girls were like, all right, we're going to go back to our car now and take off. And the guys were like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I was like, oh, there's their downfall right there.
They had their get out moment and then they screwed it up.
I can sympathize. I don't know how many bad choices I've made because some cute girl was going somewhere. So
right. Let me go too.
Anybody else have anything you want to add before we end this?
No, I like you. I'm spent as far as mine. So,
Ian?
Yeah, I think I'm done too. I think we covered this movie pretty well.
Cool. All right, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up then. So why don't you guys tell everybody again where they can partake in the esoteric order of geekdom once the coronavirus nonsense is over?
You can find us on Facebook for the Esoteric Order of Geekdom, and we're on Instagram under the same name as well. I'm pretty sure we don't have a Twitter because we don't really tweet, but
cool.
So yeah.
Maybe I'll start one and just write random things. No.
Do it. Because I don't want to.
So next week, we will be looking at The Ring, the 1998 Japanese version, also called Ringu. And Michael David Wilson from This Is Horror will be joining us for that. Till then, I am James Sabata.
And I am Don Guillory.
And we hope that you're all staying safe during this crazy, crazy time.